Hello and welcome to News Desk. I'm Michelle Stockman.
And I'm Jared Reed.
And we're hearing that the talk around Washington this week is all about an airplane. The next Air Force One specifically, and reports that it won't be made in America. Rather, it could be coming from Qatar. So you see it there on our screens. It's priced at a whopping $400 million. That would make it the most valuable gift ever given to the United States government. And President Trump is all for it. So,
amazing.
Yeah. So, Jared, I mean, what questions come to your mind when you first heard about this airplane?
Yeah, one of them, can you imagine being given a plane worth $400 million? It's almost unimaginable, right? It's crazy. And then another question I had was like, doesn't Donald Trump already have a plane? Like aside from Air Force One, he's got
Air Force Ones.
Plus his own Trump plane.
Right.
So he's going to get another one now. And then you sort of move on to what does this all mean? And so are there any ethical questions? What does Qatar want in return for this? Is this even legal? That's some of the questions I've had. Maybe people have also been asking similar questions in the chat. If you've got questions in the chat, please do direct them to Cherie Chan, who's here to tell us what people are saying. Hi, Cherie.
Hi, yeah. Cherie in the chat is here.
Yes.
We do have some interesting comments coming in, and some similar to you, Jared. For example, Herbert Bowman says, it's not hard at all to see the potential for conflict of interest accepting high-value items from external actors. Maybe it's blatant stupidity.
That's funny you should say stupidity, Herbert, because we're going to hear what President Trump said about this plane, and he said he's exactly not stupid for accepting this kind of gift. So, yeah, wait for that to come.
And we also have a poll question, as usual. Today we are asking, is it okay for Trump to accept the Qatari jet? There are 4 options. Yes, it's a free plane. Yes, Air Force One needs upgrading. No, it's a huge security risk. And no, it's bribery unconstitutional. So do vote, and we will talk about the results later.
That's right. Please weigh in on that chat for us. But first of all, as I said, let's hear what President Trump had to say about reports that Qatar will be supplying the next Air Force One to America.
Now, I could be a stupid person and say, oh, no, we don't want a free plane. We give free things out. We'll take one, too. The money we spend, the maintenance we spend on those planes to keep them tippy-top is astronomical. You wouldn't even believe it. So I think it's a great gesture from Qatar. I would never be one to turn down that kind of an offer. I mean, I could be a stupid person and say, no, we don't want a free, very expensive airplane.
All right. Do we want a free, very expensive airplane? It's not exactly, according to the argument they're making, going to belong to Trump. It's going to belong to the U.S. government, which we'll talk more about later.
Exactly, and it's not completely free for reasons we'll get into a little bit later as well. So.
Right. We're going to dig into that. But first of all, we want to talk about Trump doing business in office. We don't mean the business of the American people while in office, but Trump, his family, and people he's affiliated with making money off of crypto ventures, off of resort and real estate deals, off of merchandise, off of social media.
That's a lot of stuff, right?
A lot of stuff. And we're going to see just how much wealth has been generated from all this stuff while he is an elected federal official. What kind of potential conflict of interest does this introduce? What kind of potential exposure to corruption? What kind of potential foreign influence could Trump be exposing himself to through all these business ventures? And then, is it right? Is it right that he should be building his wealth while in office? So we're going to talk about those questions. Another thing I do need to mention, I mean, is he any different than any other American politician who's reached high office and being able to build wealth?
He's certainly not the first politician to sort of be dabbling in this, though perhaps in not quite as a public way as he's doing. So, yeah.
That's right. Okay. So, yeah, we're going to dive further into the plane later, as I said. But first, let's talk about something else that all of Washington is talking about. This is a dinner that Trump will be at the end of May. And this is an invitation-only dinner. Actually, there's been a competition to get invitations.
Right.
Right. So the way this dinner has been advertised is you have to buy Trump's meme coin. Now, this was a coin issued just before he was inaugurated. It's a cryptocurrency. And whoever buys the most of this meme coin, who's in the top 220 people who buy the most, get invites to this dinner.
Just 1 second. What is a meme coin, though? Could you just explain that before we move on, I think?
Right, definitely. Okay, so a meme coin is a form of a crypto product. So basically, it's a way to form a community. It's like you're selling a ticket to be a part of this community. And so you can take your fiat currency, whether that's dollars or euros, whatever, turn that into cryptocurrency, and then you can purchase this coin. And then it gives you certain rights within this community. You can either vote in it, or you might be promised rewards. So there's some famous examples of meme coins, like Squid Coin. You remember when Squid Game was a popular TV show? You remember that? Were you a fan, Cherie?
No, actually, I never watch it.
Okay.
Yeah, I am the outcast here.
I wasn't a fan, but I heard a lot about it. So the developers launched this meme coin, which was known as the Squid Coin, and basically promised all these rewards to people who would buy it, and people spent a whole lot of money to buy it because it was trending. So a lot of these meme coins are developed around trends or internet memes. And
just like Doge, there was this like dog, right? So wasn't he a meme coin? This like kind of funny looking dog.
It was like a joke. I can even create a cryptocurrency around a dog.
Yeah.
So anyway, so again, this is seen as a very volatile type of crypto product because it can get very valuable when it's a trending topic, and then the value can be wiped out.
Yeah.
And some have been scams. Some more legitimate ones are tradable, and they again go up and down value according to the trend. So Trump started this meme coin.
Yeah.
Right. And so we have a picture of the board.
Exactly. Let's bring this up. I think it shows. Walk us through this. What are we seeing here?
So the whole time that this was launched, I believe this was launched on April 23rd, invitation to this dinner. The whole time you could see on the board who was winning, who was going to be in the top 220 invitees. And there is an excellent analysis by Molly White. She is a crypto analyst and reporter, and she went through and looked through who's buying these things. And it's really difficult to find out because a lot of these people are buying under anonymous names. So we're not exactly sure, but through her analysis, she found that 73% of people who made it into the top 220, and it might not even be 220 people, it could just be people who've bid many times and earned several spots on this board, were those Trump coins were bought on foreign exchanges, so they might not be U.S. citizens.
Okay.
So these could be non-U.S. citizens who have spent money, millions. We're talking millions. Like the top of the board is Justin Sun.
Just a note here, I put the link in the chat, so if anyone wants to take a closer look, then you can go on there.
You got to watch, you got to look through this article by Molly. We got to give her credit. It's great work.
So Justin Sun, number one. Okay.
Yep. And I believe he spent 16 million, an equivalent of Trump meme coin, to get to the top of the board.
Okay.
And if we look at Molly's report, she showed a screenshot where when this was still going on, there it is.
Yeah.
There is an instruction to, what does it say?
It says, you're so close, fight, fight, fight for your Trump dinner. So this message here in the middle in orange, basically, I guess, urging, because you can see here, I guess this is advertised at people under 220. So this person, Dig, just missed out, right? And so I guess they're incentivizing people to try and give more so that they can get above this all-important number of 220, sort of like an incentivization.
That's right. So the issue we're seeing here is they're urging people to spend more money. You can see that often these meme coins have stunts like this to try and get people to buy more, and that raises the value of it, okay?
Interesting.
So we have this situation where now that it's closed and the invitations have gone out, and nobody really knows who is going to have a private dinner with the president, and 25 of whom are going to a tour of the White House. And again, these could be people who are non-U.S. citizens, and there are laws against U.S. presidents accepting gifts from foreign citizens.
So basically, you're saying that the people who are investing in this are trying to buy time with Donald Trump so that they can be one-on-one with him.
That is potentially the case.
Okay.
They could just be fans and want to be in the same room with him, or they could have an agenda of changes that they want to see, especially in the crypto market, where you've got a lot of people who want to have it very deregulated, or regulations that favor them, or that perhaps the SEC, the body in the U.S. government that is supposed to regulate financial institutions, may turn away the sunshine on what they're doing or drop cases against them.
I guess there is a question, though, of who benefits, right? And that's kind of, I guess, key to what we're asking here in this episode today. Who's benefiting from this? Is it solely Donald Trump, or does this spill over to the people he represents, the American people? And someone's written here, as long as the US benefits, I'm okay with it. He's a businessman, and his company will benefit from the position. Will the US people benefit too? I guess that's a big question.
Okay, I would like to bring in the expert on this, who I'm dying to ask questions about this dinner and to give us this insider look on whether Trump's involvement in the cryptosphere is going to benefit the American people, and that is Stephen Ehrlich. So welcome to the program. Just a little that I know about you. You are the executive editor of Unchained podcast, which covers the ins and outs of the cryptosphere. You've also worked in the crypto industry. You also reported at Forbes. And also, if I'm understanding, I dug into your bio. I didn't have to dig that far, really, honestly. But you worked for Booz Allen Hamilton in supporting intelligence analysis for the U.S. Department of Defense. Is that correct? Okay. So you're at this intersection.
Yeah, for a long time, I was one of the few people that could say I passed a polygraph test in a previous life when I would sit on stage at crypto conferences.
That you're saying something about people in the cryptosphere there. All right. So can we ask that question to you? Is this benefiting the American people, Trump's involvement in the cryptosphere?
It's I guess it's hard to answer. I mean, I think the American people will benefit from having clear regulations, sort of clear lines in the road, and better disclosures from token issuers so that they understand the risks of their investments, just like buying into an IPO or any other type of security. I mean, that said, much more of the industry than I would like is still run by charlatans and fraudsters, and it's very much just a speculative frenzy that if you time something wrong, you can certainly lose a lot of money. There's been plenty of reports over the last couple of weeks about how insiders for the Trump meme coin, the Melania meme coin, et cetera, made millions on the back of Trump's followers, the retail investors who almost entirely lost money. So it's really hard to tell. And then, as you were kind of mentioning, I mean, just the blatant profiteering of Donald Trump and his family from all aspects of crypto. That's something I know the crypto industry wishes just did not exist. But I feel like it's kind of the deal that they made when they fully embraced him in the latter half of 2024 in the run-up to the election.
Can you help us understand how Trump and his family and his partners are making money off of issuing and running these crypto projects?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different ways. I think the first place to begin is last fall when they launched something called World Liberty Financial. That's essentially seen as sort of a DeFi bank. DeFi stands for decentralized finance, essentially like sort of autonomous banking infrastructure that runs on top of a blockchain. They made hundreds of millions of dollars from selling what are called governance tokens. These are sort of like stocks, but they're tokens that ostensibly give the holder the right potentially to future profits from the enterprise, but also the ability to vote and help make decisions on things such as corporate strategy. The really interesting part about this particular project, though, is that right now these tokens called WLFI, World Liberty Financial, are non-transferable and actually convey no governance rights. So in that sense, it's almost like strictly giving the president's family money for almost nothing in return, because you can't sell the tokens, and frankly, there's not much utility with them. The family, they got a sizable allocation of the total token supply, and then they also get the proceeds from each subsequent sale. And I mean, one particular area of concern is, and I'll get to the other examples too, but just like, what do people who buy these tokens that convey very little value expect to get?
Right.
The last story I wrote when I was at Forbes was a profile on an entrepreneur named Justin Sun. He's a Chinese entrepreneur that launched a blockchain called Tron. And back in when World Liberty Financial started, I think it had an initial fundraising goal of $30 million, and they were nowhere close to it. And he essentially bought enough tokens to get it over that threshold so the project had viability. Why is this interesting? Well, Justin Sun is, I guess, still currently being sued by the SEC for the issuance of unregulated securities in the forms of TRX tokens, as well as fraud. And that case, along with plenty of others, dozens of others, have been either paused or canceled by the new SEC leadership. Aside from just that case, I mentioned the meme coins, which he launched just days before his inauguration,
Right.
that skyrocketed in a couple of days and have crashed subsequently, and then had a little bit of a bump in the last couple of days when Trump basically created a leaderboard, a game where the top 220 holders averaged over a period of time would be able to have dinner with him.
Right. So just
So
a second.
there's that.
I just want to show everybody who's watching what Justin Sun looks like. We've got some pictures of him. And yeah, are you seeing this screen? Do you see him eating this banana? Do you know this story, Stephen?
Oh, yes.
What we're seeing here? Can you explain what we're seeing?
Yeah, so I mean, Justin Sun is he's very famous for sort of being crypto famous. He enjoys PR stunts, and in this one, he bid $6.2 million to essentially get the ownership rights of an art installation that, as you can see, is really just a banana duct tape to a plain wall. And once he did it, he ate that $6.2 million banana. It got worldwide attention, which I think is what he was looking to do.
Yeah, he seemed to be a major Trump accolade. I also read that he learned to speak English by watching The Apprentice, and he attended UPenn, which is Trump's alma mater. Very interesting. But you know what I'm taking away from what you're saying so far is that, like, people have paid millions to kind of join this private club that exists kind of online, and yet they have no rights. And that's the price to entry, and the Trumps and their affiliates get to keep the money, which is really questionable.
Yeah.
And then we're also seeing that Justin Sun is the #1 on this leaderboard. Why would he, there's a conservative commentator, Ben Shapiro, called what Trump has done with this dinner skeezy. Why would it appear skeezy for Justin Sun to attend a dinner with Donald Trump? Pay to attend.
I mean, there's a few reasons, and this is not just solely. This commentary doesn't reflect just on Justin, but I mean, the fact that essentially it's pay for play to get access to Donald Trump and the White House, which is already, I think, icky, for lack of a better term, for many people. But then there's the other fact that right now, we don't really know who many of the people are that are buying these tokens. Many of them are probably foreigners, and it just kind of gets into the question of what do they want? They're giving him money. Same thing with the Qatari jet. You would expect that they would want something in return, not just 10 minutes of FaceTime with him. I mean, maybe for some that's what they would want, but it's really just putting the presidency up for sale. That's what people are afraid of, and the president is in a very unique has unique standing in terms of the U.S. government, because he doesn't have the same types of conflicts of interest, rules and regulations that other elected representatives have to abide by, and really just this very blatant sort of profiteering off of crypto is something that I know the industry does not want. I didn't even get a chance to talk about the other things that his family is doing. I mean, for one, they are launching a stablecoin, which is essentially a digital dollar token that runs on top of blockchains. That can be a very, very profitable enterprise because
can I just ask why the timing?
Is,
why the timing of when they have issued this? Why is that interesting?
I'm sorry, the timing of issuing
the stablecoin.
The stablecoin, or
the timing of when
so
they've
the
issued
stablecoin. Yeah, it is interesting, and for a couple of reasons. I mean, one, stablecoins are a really, honestly, you can make a case they're the most profitable sector in all of crypto. I mean, Coinbase is seen as a massive company. It's about to join the S&P 500, the first crypto firm to ever do that. Its profitability is dwarfed by a company called Tether that runs I believe about 140 or 150 billion dollar stablecoin, and their business model is essentially issuing these digital dollar tokens, taking that collateral and investing it in gold, Bitcoin, and US Treasuries, and at 4 to 5% annualized interest rates. I mean, I think in the first quarter they made $13 billion in profit. Wow. I mean, that's obscene. So, I mean, that is what Donald Trump was trying to chase with his own new dollar token. But that was also problematic from a public relations point of view for two reasons. I mean, for one, I think it's being seeded by an investment entity from the UAE, which can lead to certain questions. And two, I believe it's being I'm sorry, it's being funded through that, and I believe also the UAE is using that token to invest in Binance, which is actually the world's largest cryptocurrency exchange, and also had to, I believe, in about a year and a half ago, had to pled guilty to anti-money laundering violations with the DOJ and paid a multi-billion-dollar fine, the largest in history. And its founder, Changpeng Zhao, went to prison for 4 months. Now he's also reportedly looking for a pardon. So all this sort of pay for play is really problematic. And then finally, too, President's son, Eric Trump, has joined the board of a Bitcoin mining company in the U.S. So they're going at this industry from all angles.
Stephen, Jared Reed here. We've got a question about how corrupt, I guess, is all of this. Someone's written here, I can imagine how blockchain technology could be used in a way that would be beneficial for the average person, but the way it's being done right now is so corrupt and captured by the most corrupt people. Do you have any response to that user who asked that?
I empathize with the question because, I mean, really, blockchain could create a fairer, more transparent financial system. It could eliminate middlemen, the rent seekers, which was one of the main reasons why it was created almost 15 years ago in the aftermath of the great financial crisis. But like anything else, any other type of technology, there are ways for people to try to get ahead. And one of the problems that I don't think many investors understand is how adversarial sometimes the economics of crypto can be. I mean, going all the way back to the ICO crisis, or the initial coin offering crisis back in 2017, 2018, which was sort of the crypto version of the IPO. I mean, many entrepreneurs launched tokens, raised tens of millions of dollars with little more than a white paper. Sometimes those white papers were even copied from someone else's with just a new token name. Then even the projects that were legitimate, oftentimes big chunks of those tokens would be sold to institutional investors like venture capitalists, hedge funds, et cetera, at massively discounted prices. And once they appreciated, they would then dump on retail investors. So that hurt the chances of their profitability. NFTs were another big bubble. And then meme coins, which was sort of the fad du jour from the last year or two. Mm-hmm. We wrote a big story on that in Forbes. Those economics, that was almost even more dangerous because those meme coins were presented as a way of what's called a fair launch in crypto, where theoretically everybody gets access to the tokens at the same time. So they're not getting the VCs are not getting preferential treatment. But what we actually found in our research is that for the vast majority of tokens, large quantities of them, I mean, upwards of 40, 50, 80% of the tokens are concentrated in a couple of wallets. And what that means is that if one of these tokens really takes off and those tokens become valuable, they can be immediately dumped on retail, and the entire thing can collapse because there is not actually the demand that perhaps a price chart would suggest. So that gets to just like how transparent or potentially corrupt or problematic crypto can be in general. Then the discussion about what Donald Trump and his family, what they're doing, I think is an entirely separate discussion, and it's one I wish was not occurring. I actually had an interview with Tim Masad a few months ago. He was a former chair of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, and I was asking him to sort of analogize what's happening with Trump and crypto, et cetera, and he basically said, like, to put it into perspective of how wrong he saw this, he said it's not like Jimmy Carter was creating peanut farming legislation when his family ran a peanut farm back in Georgia. Yeah. So I thought that was an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about Jimmy Carter in just a minute.
We've got a picture of him peanut farming. So
yeah,
we do. Up a bit later.
We do. Really? But you know, I kind of want to take a step back again and just look at the way Donald Trump has been able to build his wealth over the course of his 2 presidencies. And it's one of your, maybe he's not a colleague anymore, but a reporter from Forbes, Dan Alexander, had a great article about how Donald Trump doubled his wealth in a year. And I think it's interesting to look at a chart that's in this article. Yeah. It tracks Donald Trump's net worth. But yeah, here we go. Okay, so in 2016, at the start of his presidency, I can't even read.
4.5 billion, it says here, yep.
Okay, so then he did lose money.
Yeah.
We see going down to 2020.
2020 down to 2.1.
Right. And then we know, I think it was March 2024, Donald Trump is on the ropes. He's just been convicted of fraud in a New York state court. There's a $400 million penalty against him. He doesn't have the liquidity to pay it. And so what does he do? According to the article, he asks his lawyers to get a delay. And in that time, he takes his online platform, Truth Social Public,
yeah,
which bumps up the value by $2.1 billion. Now, that's in a trust held by his son. It's not liquid. But then after that, he starts merchandising. He also then gets into crypto.
Right.
And that's when he starts launching, he gets involved with World Liberty Financial and launches the Trump meme coin. And you can see what that's done. In a year, he doubled his wealth.
Yeah, and that's funny. I didn't, before researching this, I had no idea about any of this. It's completely, that his wealth jumped by so much in a single year.
Neither did I.
Yeah.
And it's completely online. It's these crypto ventures. I think it's interesting to hear what his administration has said about that. Wade, you've got a clip from Caroline Leavitt, I think, who's his press secretary. Let's see what she has said about Trump doing business in office.
This is a president who has actually lost money for being president of the United States. I don't remember these same type of questions being asked of my predecessor about a career politician who was clearly profiting off of this office. That is not what President Trump does, and this White House holds ourselves to the highest of ethical standards.
So what's your reaction to that, Stephen? You kind of answered before, but I guess I want to ask, can't he be allowed to make money? It seems like he likes doing business, like some presidents like Obama like to play basketball in his free time. He likes to do business. What's wrong with that?
Yeah, a couple things. One, I'm glad you brought up Dan Alexander's article. I got to know him relatively well at Forbes, and he's the best, frankly, probably in the world at tracking his wealth and reporting on Trump's net worth. So it really, I think you put things pretty clear in that chart, and I know it was a big issue last summer when he got that judgment. How was he going to pay it off? And then he got this bonanza from Truth Social, which I guess went public through a SPAC, I believe, and it wasn't entirely liquid, but he definitely got a life preserver there. And then with all the crypto stuff. He'd been selling a few NFTs he sold a few series of NFTs in past years, but only made a couple $1 million from them. But once he once he really embraced the crypto community in July of last year, when he gave a talk at a Bitcoin conference in Nashville, Tennessee, he went all in. And it's funny. Sometimes you think rich people, like how much money is enough, but the answer is probably there's never enough money to have. And I don't know. I mean, I've never met the man. I've never spoken with him, but I guess maybe it's hard to think you're going to make all these other people money. Why not me as well? Like what's the harm there if I'm lifting all boats? That's the only thing I can think of. As far as like whether or not it's illegal, et cetera. Again, it seems like the presidency is sort of in a world of its own as far as conflicts of interest. And some of the things that he's doing would not be legal if a U.S. senator or a member of the U.S. House of Representatives tried to do that. And I think that as much as it leaves a foul taste in people's mouths in the crypto community, and I know that it does, I've spoken with enough of them on the record and off the record, they really wish this was not happening. They still see it as a better alternative to the very adversarial stance that the Biden administration and their SEC chair, Gary Gensler, took towards the community, where basically it was regulation by enforcement. Now, I think what's going to happen, there's a few things that are going on right now in crypto that are probably important to keep in mind. One, there's a very important August deadline. The president and his administration have pretty much said that they would like to get 2 key pieces of legislation passed. They would be the first ever actual pieces of crypto legislation signed into law passed by the August recess. One is focused on stable coins themselves, to sort of put out some rules and regulations as far as who is allowed to issue them, what type of collateral can be used to back them, other things like how they're safeguarded, what are the responsibilities as far as redeeming tokens if they get submitted, and a host of other things. The other piece of legislation, and this one is even more ambitious, is market structure. And this is the one that would really lay out the rules of the road as far as delineating when a token is a security or a commodity, and therefore determining if the CFTC or the SEC has jurisdiction, what types of disclosures might need to be issued from issuers so that investors know what they're buying, they understand the risks, and a suite of other issues. Now, stablecoin legislation, because it seems to be a simpler product, was always seen as the lowest hanging fruit, kind of an easy thing to get over the line. There was bipartisan consensus even during the Biden administration to get something done, but they ran out of time. That hit a major roadblock in the Senate last week when they were trying to put it to a vote, and essentially they were not able to achieve cloture because several Democratic senators, even ones that supported this bill in the past, decided that they would no longer support it. And a big reason were these conflicts of interest from Donald Trump. So it's really come to a head a little bit as far as, like, is he going to step back from some of his profiteering in order to help this community go further? The community, again, with that bitter taste, they were swallowing it because they were still getting what they wanted, legislation. They did not want to be subject to 90-year-old securities laws. But that is now in danger. And then the other question that's going to come up too at some point is, again, like as icky or as sour as all this might taste to the community, at least right now, the prices are going up. Bitcoin is at, I don't know, like $103,000. It's just a small tick down from its all-time high of about 108 or so. At some point, though, so in a weird way, everyone's interests are still aligned. At some point, could that change? And then what would the community say about that? So I think that the community has given him a lot of rope, but depending on what happens in these next couple of months, some things could certainly come to a head.
All right. Well, we definitely want to watch you and listen to you on your podcast as you keep watching with a close eye and keep us apprised of what's going to happen, I would say, in this wild, wild west of finance and how Trump's going to affect it. Really interesting stuff. Thank you so much, Stephen, for joining us today. And we hope to have you again.
Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right. So we are now going to bring on our eyes and ears in Washington. Yeah. That is Janelle Dumalaon, who is going to help us understand the political optics of Trump's involvement in the crypto sphere, of this enormous wealth that he's building while in office. So thank you so much. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Janelle.
Hi, it's good to see you guys. Good morning from rainy Washington. I was going to say swampy, but let's stick to rain. Everybody can just...
Oh, come on. There's so much drain the swamp talk. You know, it must be a little bit less humid. Okay, so Janelle, what I'd like to do as we bring you on is I want to get a sense of just how norm busting this is for Donald Trump to be making so much money while in office. And I thought we would take a diddle it little look back in time. I was trying to be Wayne's World there.
Okay,
I'm an SNL fan.
I love it.
I love it. Anyway, so let's look back at how past presidents and presidential candidates have gone out of their way to avoid even the appearance of evil when it comes to financial impropriety, and then others who've gotten a little bit sticky. So let's start out with Jimmy Carter. I'm going to try and run through these pretty fast. Jimmy Carter, as we heard before, he owned a peanut farm. And we have to remember, this is just after Watergate, when Nixon left office, huge amount of scandal. Jimmy Carter, to avoid any appearance that he would make decisions that would benefit his peanut farm, he put it in a blind trust.
That's him there on the left. So he's the one.
That's right.
Bending down, harvesting the peanuts. Is that how do you harvest peanuts? I guess so.
I've never harvested a peanut, but that's on my bucket list now.
Yeah.
Okay, so then another key presidential era to look at is the Clinton era. So Bill Clinton did get in hot water because he invited big donors to the Democratic National Committee to have overnights in the Lincoln bedroom in the White House. 24 such nights, and these were people who donated $100,000 or more.
This is it, right?
That's it. So he got in a lot of hot water for that. It wasn't, cash coming to him personally. It was going to the Democratic National Committee, which is in charge of choosing candidates and funding campaigns. Big, big scandal. After he left office, he also got in a lot of hot water because the Clinton Foundation that he started accepted donations from Qatar. And so that was seen as a conflict of interest because his wife, Hillary Clinton, was the Secretary of State at the time. And that could be seen as buying access to her as Secretary of State. There's no such confirmed allegation of that, but, that it made it look suspicious.
Right.
Then we have Mitt Romney. He ran for president in 2012. I was a reporter in the States following that campaign, probably the most boring presidential campaign ever, if we look back in time. Mitt Romney was the richest man to run for president at that time, worth around $250 million. He released 2 years of his tax returns and put all of his investments in a blind trust, although he got in a little bit of hot water because it turned out it was his personal attorney. And so that didn't look good.
Can I tell my Mitt Romney joke?
Oh, please do.
The German Mitt Romney joke, because when he was running for president, Mitt means with in German, so people were saying Mitt Romney, ohne Romney, like without Romney. Anyway, it's
Aw, Mittens.
Yeah.
He really got a lot of flack. He
Poor
got
Mitt.
Poor Mitt. Okay, and then we look at Joe Biden. His son Hunter Biden came under scrutiny for suspicion and allegations of accepting. For his business dealings in Ukraine, that he made it happen so there was access to the. Maybe Janelle, you can tell us more about that. But all the prior presidents and presidential candidates, except for Trump, released their tax returns. Mitt Romney did 2 years, no more. But there was just an effort to be financially transparent, to put business aside and make the business of the American people the priority in office.
Right.
So, Janelle, after that long introduction, I want to ask you, you've been out on the campaign trail recently. You've talked to Democrats and Republicans. So what is the sense you're getting from them about politicians and wealth? Is it a problem?
Michelle, that's a really interesting question, especially, in this context of the last election where the economy, purchasing power, these were themes that just dominated so heavily. So money very obviously on people's minds. And I do have to say, generally, and I will get to your question, Michelle, I promise, this is America, right? People do aspire towards wealth. The American dream is an economic aspiration. And from what I can gather, the dream is not necessarily wishing you had just enough, right? And the further away from that dream you get, the more anger you might see. So getting to your question, I have found, perhaps, unsurprisingly, that the wealth of politicians is a partisan issue. So if you talk to Democrats, of course, they will say that Trump and his rich friends, his proximity to Elon Musk, that's all a problem, right? This was also a cornerstone of Democratic messaging around the campaign. Trump isn't in it for you. He doesn't care about you. He's in it for himself and his rich friends. Well, Trump supporters would often say that the fact that he is a rich man would mean that he doesn't actually have to be president because he's already a rich man. He would not need to enrich himself further by seeking this position and enriching himself in it, because we all know that famously, once rich people become rich, they stop wanting to enrich themselves further. That's something, I'm kidding, but of course, and they would also, thanks guys. They would also point to what they see as corruption on the other side. You mentioned Hunter Biden earlier. Now, Hunter Biden, of course, has been accused of trading on the Biden name to gain business privileges. They might say something about how Nancy Pelosi likes to trade on privileged information to win at the stock market. And, just because I've already brought it up, this is something that is allowed, by the way. So members of Congress are allowed to take what they know about pending action that the government might take, information that might not necessarily be public, and use that information to trade on the stock market. So that is perfectly legal, but I can tell you Democrats or Republicans, no one likes that from either side.
All right. I mean, I can honestly tell you, in my family, I have Republicans, and they're always going to say, well, what about the Democrats? They're also, making money too. Everybody's corrupt. Do you get a sense at all that Americans, I've just turned a blind eye to this because they say you can't clean up the swamp?
Once again, I think it is a partisan issue. Like, if it's your side that's doing it, then you will find that there is less of a problem with it. But what I am curious to see is, so you have been talking, I've joined this discussion late, but I assumed you've talked a lot about this private plane.
We're going
to.
We're
the
going
new
to.
Air Force One that Trump might receive from the Qataris. And I'm curious to see what this will do to the public discourse at a time where he's also telling Americans that perhaps they have to brace for a time where they might have fewer dolls, fewer pencils. And he's getting gifts of a new Air Force One from the Qatari government. I am wondering what that sort of juxtaposition will do to perceptions of why Trump gets more and why he is telling us that we might have to go with less, especially as an impact of tariff policies that are set to make prices go higher here.
Well, let's dig into this airplane a little bit more. Let's circle back to that.
Yeah.
You're obsessed with this, I know.
Well,
so tell
a little
us
bit.
more. Tell us more about this airplane.
Yeah, so by now, we've established, most of you who've been watching the whole time, we've talked a little bit about the airplane, but this is a plane that the Qatari royal family wants to give Donald Trump. They just want to give it to him. It's a gift that is under review currently by Qatari authorities and US officials, but the White House says it wants to accept the plane as a new type of Air Force One. And we've got some pictures there. I can also show you a little bit of what it looks like inside, thanks to this website called Aerotime. Thank you very much for your information here. So we can see it looks very luxurious. It's a Boeing 747-8 plane that's been described as a palace in the sky. And you can see it's quite luxurious. It's not quiet luxury. It's very loud luxury, but also beige, lots of beige.
Lots of beige.
Lots of top-of-the-line finishes here, so luxurious sofas and tables and staircases and things like that. So this is you can get a bit of an idea of what it looks like. Now, Donald Trump has already seen the plane. It was in the US earlier this year, and he got a tour of it when it was parked in Florida. As you've said, I think, earlier at the beginning of the show, it's estimated that this plane is worth around $400 million. So potentially one of the most valuable gifts given to the United States by a foreign government ever. Now, we've got the plane itself. It still needs to be fitted out to suit the specifications required to carry a president. This would be done, I guess, by the Air Force and the military. So there's lots of things that still need to be added to the plane. And basically, once that's done, the idea is to use it as Air Force One until Donald Trump's term ends, and then the plane, the ownership of the plane would be transferred to Trump's presidential foundation, which all presidents get or they establish once they've left office. Now, Trump, as we heard at the beginning of the show in that soundbite, he's saying, well, look, it's obvious I would accept this plane, right, because it's worth so much money, $400 million. By accepting that plane, it saves the US taxpayer $400 million. That's not quite so true, because this fit out that needs to happen after he would receive the plane, this military fit out by the Air Force, would need to be funded by the US taxpayer. And there are estimates that that could cost as much as the plane itself. There are also other concerns too, like, is this bribery? Is it foreign influence? What does Qatar get in return? Is it even legal or constitutional? We've had a lot of comments today talking about, is it constitutional for the president to accept this, and what are the implications on national security? And Donald Trump's been criticised. All of these concerns have been brought up, not just by Democrats, but also by Republicans too. So let's have a listen to some of these concerns from both sides of the political fence.
This is not only an outrageous example of corruption, which this administration is famous for, but it is also completely negligent and, as far as I'm concerned, reckless.
Gift, bribe, call it what you want. I imagine the government of Qatar would expect a return on this investment in the President of the United States.
I'm sure that if and when there is, it's no longer a hypothetical. I can assure you there will be plenty of scrutiny of whatever that arrangement might look like.
Qatar's not, in my opinion, a great ally. I mean, they support Hamas, and so what I'm worried about is the safety of the President of the United States.
National security threats. You're going to take a plane from another country? And Air Force One is the most complicated piece of aircraft in the world.
And it's going to have to be put through a lot of paces and probably every square inch analyzed before I think the president should consider it as primary means of transportation.
It's worth the investment here in this country to build a big, beautiful jet here in the United States. So if he wants my advice, that would be it.
So some disappointment there from even Trump supporters. Usually we've got the Republicans as an impermeable wall when it comes to Trump, not ready to criticize. But we saw that break a little bit around this plane. So Janelle, what has been the reaction in Washington, I would say, to the legal arguments that the White House and Pam Bondi's Department of Justice have come up with to say this is totally legit?
I mean, we heard from some of the lawmakers there in that clip that you just played. I think somewhat of an understatement, but there is skepticism to this idea that would be totally legit. I mean, first of all, it is enshrined in the Constitution. There is something called the Emoluments Clause, and this is a phrase that people have been tossing all over Washington this time around.
Well, you can bring that up, actually. We've got the actual bit in the Constitution where it says this emoluments clause. Emolument means compensation, basically. It says the president and other federal employees can't accept a present of any kind whatever from any king, prince, or foreign state. So there it is in black and white, if you like.
Yeah, so that's pretty clear. There's also that part that comes after that says that they can't do that without the consent of Congress. And, we heard from those Congress people there, they did not sound particularly consenting to this idea. But I think this is going to be a key point. You have this law, but it's not self-executing, right? You sort of need a system of enforcement around it. You need and the only way I see that being enforced is via Congress. So they're the ones who are going to have to do something. But in terms of the reaction to this plane in Washington, I think this is a very big gift, a very big, expensive, very hard to hide gift. And I think perhaps it is the most sort of concrete evidence that something is not right here when it comes to what Trump might be getting out of this presidency that he is not entitled to. It's more concrete than crypto. People understand the gift of a private plane. They might not understand sort of, could he be enriching himself via investment funds? Could he be enriching himself via meme coins? Could he be enriching himself via luxury properties? A plane is a plane is a plane. It's, people understand what that is. And if it ends up in his backyard, that's kind of going to be hard to hide.
But if we can sort of give what Pam Bondi has been arguing, and she is the US Attorney General for people who are not sure. According to reports, her analysis is that this acceptance of the plane doesn't contradict the Constitution's prohibition because the plane isn't being given to an individual, because it would need to be given to the US Air Force so it can fit it out with all of these military specifications, and then it would be given to Trump's presidential foundation afterwards. So, I mean, kind of sounds like quite sort of ambitious, acrobatic legal arguments there, but that's kind of what they are saying.
I did hear like some sort of pushback to that, and it centers around how long of a time it would take before that plane is in fact ready. So you can imagine with Air Force One, there are all sorts of security features that come with it. There are all sorts of technical features that come with it. It's not an ordinary plane. It's supposed to be the safest plane and the safest, most secure plane in the sky for the most powerful person in the world. So the assumption is that trying to get a plane like that ready could take years. Now, taking a period of years could mean that by the time this plane is ready, Trump would no longer be president. I mean, of course, there's all this talk about him running for a third term, but, as things stand, he will not be president. He will not be president in 2028, or the new term starts in 2029. If it takes that long to get ready and the Qataris give him this gift, then it is nothing else but a personal gift. As such, Bondi's argument might not hold up entirely well then, unless there's some way to fast track this that nobody is talking about.
Right. And Janelle and Jared, I think it's also important to note that Trump already ordered 2 new Air Force One planes from Boeing in 2018 that are currently under construction. There's been delays because of cost overruns. I think one of the important subcontractors went into bankruptcy, and also they're having a hard time finding personnel that are vetted to be able to work on something that requires so much security like the presidential plane. And, as an American, I can say there is generally an understanding that when you go into government service, you're going to have a lower salary. You might not have a lot of the perks and the higher salary and things that you might get in a private job, but you're serving the nation, and that's something to be proud of. And I think there might be a lot of people like my dad who, drove a car till it died and just, kept on repairing it just to keep it on the road. Because he wanted to get the life out of it and do what's best for his family. So, you look at the Air Force One plane that exists, and I think to many Americans, it's already pretty luxurious. So it is, this might be a bit of American opinionism and experience here, but it does seem a tough thing to swallow that the president needs this plane right now. Now, I'm not Donald Trump. I don't know all the details, but...
Yeah, well, I mean, we've had a... Oh, sorry, Cherie, you go. We should come to you. Yeah.
I just want to bring in Defoe's comment because he said planes like this shouldn't exist, period. I guess that's aligned with what we were just talking about.
Yeah, interesting. Now, we've had a question, Janelle, on the checks and balances around this, and that's kind of what underpins all of this. Someone is writing here, the reason why Trump can do what he wants in regards to this is because the Democrats are weak and essentially leaderless, and the GOP has been entirely captured by one man, and they won't stand up to him, and that it's going to harm US democracy in the long term. Have you got anything you could add to that?
Well, yeah, I mean, since we're talking about deregulation, we're talking about checks and balances, I did make that point earlier about how laws have to be, aren't self-executing, and you need Congress to enforce these mechanisms to make sure that the laws are applied. But you also have related efforts from Trump going alongside it. He has like this phrase, drain the swamp, but he has this other famous one, which is about eliminating the deep state, right? So basically shrinking the federal bureaucracy, firing lots of federal staff, closing down agencies and independent watchdogs, installing them with loyalists. So in terms of the norm-breaking nature of all of this, the fact that Congress seems to not have found an effective way to keep him in check, the fact that there are people like whose role it is in government, via these agencies and via the independent watchdogs, that they're not able to keep tabs on them because in many cases they're no longer there. They've been replaced by someone more loyal to Trump. So what does this mean for democracy? I do think that it does not portend very well that instead of draining the swamp, what Trump appears to be doing is staffing it. So that could be a problem, and that is an indication that this system is not working as it should.
So Janelle, though, but why isn't Congress cracking down? Can you give us a sense of the political makeup right now that kind of prevents people from maybe answering to their constituents and more answering to the party?
I think a lot of it has to do with messaging, right? I don't think they've landed on a consistent message with regard to how to keep Trump in check. I think a lot of it also has to do with the volume of things that are happening. Hundreds of executive orders. You have to chase every one of them in the courts. Things that don't seem entirely constitutional. There is a problem of prioritization, and there is also this. To go back a little, I think Democrats in the last election might have overestimated the sort of importance or worry for the future of democracy in voters' minds in the last elections. I think they failed to sort of focus on the economic message, and they overestimated how important the defense of democracy was to Americans, and that was what they chose to run on. And I think at this point, they have sort of recognized that message has failed. Do they think it is still, do Democrats think it is a concern? Very much, but they haven't found a way, I think, to articulate this to the American people in a way that, in a way that people, people really viscerally understand.
I just want to bring in a question that many people have asked, actually. I also have this question in mind, especially Carolina, who addressed to you, Janelle. She's a big fan of you. She asked, with this plane issue, is this impeachable against Trump? And there are also other people asking, not only about the plane, but also all these other crypto and family business. Is it a reason, or is there a chance to impeach Trump even after his presidency? Oh, no, sorry, not after his presidency, but like
during. And after the Supreme Court ruling on immunity for the president. I think that's an important thing to put before the question. Great questions, though.
Yeah, I mean, because Michelle already brought it up, you do remember this Supreme Court ruling that basically granted Trump broad powers as an executive, basically making him free from any prosecution as long as what he is conducting is an official act. And while you are president, it's kind of hard to separate out what is an official act and what isn't. As such, the future of, forward-facing prosecutions against Trump, we might have an issue with that. It's like we had ongoing prosecutions for Trump for many cases before he became president. They all disappeared when he became president. They all basically collapsed under the weight of that Supreme Court ruling. With regard to, it's always hard to predict, right? Like what kind of the makeup of the future will be, whether Congress will find a way to sort of demand accountability from Trump when it comes to these things. But again, that Supreme Court ruling makes things very difficult for now. I keep saying this, I'm going to keep saying it over and over, but laws are not self-enforcing. There was another point that I was going to make, but let's see if it comes back to me as I'm stalling. You guys talk among yourselves as this is happening.
I mean, I was just reflecting on the comment that I had earlier, too, about being American and, expecting certain things out of government. I can also say, as an American, there's part of me that expects and wants my nation to be on the forefront of business, on innovation, and seeing a nation that's winning. And that's interpreted differently for different Americans, of course. And so I can see how what he's doing could be viewed positively and also negatively. And it really will come down to, if we're talking about Trump exposure legally, it will come down to how this is argued in courts. I think it's so hard to predict.
I mean, if we're talking about crypto, right, Trump himself has said that he wants to make the US the crypto capital of the world. And he probably would argue that what he's doing now is sort of going in that direction. But we heard from Stephen that the crypto community itself is quite split on what he's doing, and sort of, I guess, they're putting up with him because they have to, but then they're not doing it necessarily with a lot of eagerness.
Well, and image is huge right now, I think, to the crypto community to come across as like a legitimate enterprises and rather move away from some of the scandals that have beset that industry for a while. Well, Janelle, thank you so much for joining us today on this episode about Trump doing business in office. And I think we had a really interesting talk on some of these sticky issues. And we hope to have you back on the show again.
Thanks, Janelle.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys. It was fun.
Yeah. We're going to check in with our poll right now to see what the viewers think about
we just
the
closed
plane.
it a minute ago, and we have 286 votes. I will repeat the question again. Is it okay for Trump to accept the Qatari jet? 54% says no, it's bribery unconstitutional. 23% says yes, it's a free plane. 14% says no, it's a huge security risk. And 6% says yes, Air Force One needs upgrading. I guess that's like what you said just now, Michelle, that like it looks like this Air Force One right now doesn't really need like some renovation, or like we don't really need a new Air Force One plane, right?
Yeah, I guess it's all about your personal level of comfort. I know you
relative.
I mean, I know you like comfortableness. If you need a whole new plane for that. Anyway, everybody, thank you so much for joining the discussion. It's been great today.
Thank you so much, everyone. And just a reminder, we will bring up next week's topic on Tuesday, so 24 hours before the next news desk starts. We'll put up our topic then and ask you to weigh in on the community post when that is uploaded. But thank you so much again for this really engaging discussion, and to our regulars and to the new ones who have been watching today. Thank you so much for your company, and see you next week.
We'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.